movement person, and she was a movement person through and through. She didn't make any distinction between her work as a homeopath and her other work in the movement. She saw what she did as a homeopath as a contribution to the movement, as a contribution to try to create a more caring society, because we certainly don't have a caring society right now. Sorry. She was an anti-racist as part of her anti-capitalist work. She was against all forms of discrimination. She was a founding member of Queer Strike, as has been said. I also want to say that we are going to be organizing a benefit for HERF, the Haiti Emergency Relief Fund, in memory of Lori, and Pierre from Haiti, Pierre Labossière from Haiti Action Committee will speak here today as well about his memory of Lori. And when I saw Pierre today at the crematorium, I must say it put things in perspective. And it would have put things in perspective for Lori too, because as much as we mourn for Lori and we mourn her passing, we know that in Haiti, what is happening to us today is happening to people every day on a grand scale. That people are mourning many people all the time and picking themselves up and carrying on with that struggle. And so it's very good to see yourself in perspective when you're losing a dear one. The message from Selma James, which you can all see, there's various messages, but I thought I would read this one. Selma James is the founder of the Wages for Housework campaign and the coordinator of the Global Women's Strike. And it was through meeting Selma that Lori got involved in the campaign, and it was through meeting me, although she was in the campaign before me, that she became involved in homeopathy because I suggested she studies it. And as a result of it, she felt she had this lifelong debt to me because I had done this wonderful thing of suggesting that she studied homeopathy. And I feel I have a lifelong debt to her because of all the wonderful things she did with the homeopathy that she did study and how accountable she was to the movement with it. Selma says, I met Lori Nairne in the Bay Area at a meeting under a tree in 1973. It was one of those informal gatherings that happened during a long lecture tour where, speaking to 2, 3, even 4 audiences a day, I found out what the perspective of Wages for Housework was all about. Years later, she reminded me that I had spoken about labor power being repaired in hospitals by nurses like her so people could go back to work as quickly as possible. Wages for Housework clicked with her then, and she never looked back. Lori chose to be a nurse along with many thousands of other women who were determined that the work they had to do in order to earn a living contradicted as little as possible what they were fighting for in the movement. For Lori, that meant she would entirely reject Big Pharma as the enemy of health and embrace the many alternatives that people around the world have developed and tried to hold on to. Homeopathy was her focus for all the health issues she explored. She considered it more humane and more respectful of the individual. She thought health was dependent on her own ability to mobilize the body's refusal of pain and disease. Sorry. It was of a piece with the politics we shared. Homeopathy calls it individual vital force. In politics, we call it the justice movement. Lori has left behind not only her remedies and a good core library of books of homeopathy and other routes to health, she has also left behind a standard of how professionals and their specialist knowledge must be a power for the rest of us rather than a power against us. Lori was always finding out new things and making this as accessible as possible. She was not only a homeopath, but an educator, which is why she proposed to go to Guyana and train our network there to heal each other when they couldn't afford even bad health care. She met a number of health crises of women and their children. People had better health ongoingly as a result of her visit. And somebody will read a wonderful message from the women in Guyana who were distraught when they found out that she had died. This leveling, which was a legacy of the 60s, became rarer as Reagan and Thatcher took charge. Lori didn't get rich or arrogant, pompous or stale. We all called on her all the time and expected the willing response that we got. We took it for granted, and it is our standard. Lori was a fine public speaker. In usual conversation, she spoke in a West Coast informal way. But when she got up to speak, she was all there, articulate, precise, powerful, with a good voice, charming. To Lori, today we say Lori presente because she lives in our hearts, and not only she lives in our work, in our everyday work in the movement to change this capitalist and horrible society that we live in, and cutthroat society that Lori was really against. So today we welcome you all here, and we hope that all of you will have something to say about our dear friend and comrade and compañera, Lori Nairne. Thank you.
Thank you, Nina. Some of you, probably have copies of her obituary, but I just wanted to go through some of the major contributions that Lori's made over the years because, as we said, it's been enormous. And she and I co-coordinated the Global Women's Strike well, we started off as the Wages for Housework campaign in the 80s. And for 35 years, we've co-coordinated together the Bay Area, now the Global Women's Strike. And we also work together on Queer Strike and other organizations as well. Lori was the daughter of Andrew Lori Nairne and May Nairne. And she was born in October the 23rd, 1951, and grew up in Southern California, in Stockton, California. Sorry, my eyes aren't very good. When she was in her early 20s, she made her way to Berkeley and later to what she considered the independent Republic of San Francisco. She was part of the movement of the 60s and 70s, starting with student organizing and the election of Harvey Milk. And she was really involved in the organizing around Harvey Milk back in those days. She dedicated herself to the movement for the rest of her life. Lori became an RN, as has been said, and like many others, she wanted a day job that wouldn't contradict her movement principles. She was a caring woman, as has been said, and nursing was a way that she could get as close as she could to humane and caring work. In the 1980s, she co-coordinated a campaign initiated by nurses in the Wages for Housework campaign, which won an upgrade program for LVNs, licensed vocational nurses, to become RNs and get credit for on-the-job training. As has been said, Lori studied homeopathy, and it was the love of her life. She studied at the Pacific Academy of Homeopathic Medicine, and she became a licensed homeopath. She was appalled at Big Pharma's control and domination of healthcare, which she called Western medicine. She loved homeopathy and its holistic approach based on strengthening the each individual's vital force. She often did homeopathy consultations for free or low cost, including on Skype. She reached out to many people around the world including Spain, Ireland, and the UK. In 2011, she spent a few months in Guyana training grassroots women there in the Global Women's Strike at their Women's Center in Georgetown. Her patients remarked that she never rushed you and was eager to learn the details of your health care that only you could know. Many cite her caring and her kindness, and what a cheerful temperament she had. Lori's impact was profound. In the early days of the LGBTQ movement, before it was generally recognized that lesbian women could be mothers too, she fought for the right of custody for lesbian mothers in Wages Due Lesbians, which later became Queer Strike. And she held the groundbreaking first Lesbian Mothers' Day in the Park back in the 80s, which was the first time that lesbian mothers had even been public, and anybody had visibly seen lesbian mothers in the Golden Gate Park as a group. She and others in our organization had a close working relationship with Tom Amiano, one of the few principled politicians, and we've maintained that relationship to this day. As coordinator of Legal Action for Women in San Francisco, which is a women's legal service, and in fact, Nedra, our lawyer, who's been working with us and is going to speak since 1985, she's been our volunteer lawyer. And back in the days, we had a red piece, it was called a Peacemobile. It was a London double-decker bus, and we used to take it to the Tenderloin, and Lori coordinated this effort, and we just opened the doors, and people who couldn't afford any legal help jumped on the bus, and Nedra was there. And sometimes Nedra had to bring her kids because she didn't have childcare, and gave legal advice on the bus, on the Martin Luther King Peacemobile. Lori and I work closely together. I'm with the US Prostitutes Collective as well, and there are a number of other sex worker organizations here today. I'm so glad you came and know very well the work that Lori did and what we've done together. I mean, we've done so many pickets and actions and protests and film shows, and she worked really closely for sex workers' rights. One big piece of work that Lori did was there was a serial rapist in San Francisco, Jack Boken. Some of you here will remember the campaign that we did because the police and the DA were determined to let him out. He had been arrested and indicted, and he had 35 felony charges against him after attacking 3 women. 2 of them were prostitutes, and he went out and attacked a 4th young sex worker, almost killed her. And Lori coordinated a court monitoring campaign that went on for months during his whole trial to make sure that Jack Boken, got put away. Not that we like prisons or think prisons are great, but this was somebody who was just out to attack women, particularly sex workers, who he thought, were fair game. Representing Queer Strike, and along with Payday Men's Network, which is a group of men who we work with in our international campaign, Lori helped spearhead the successful Grand Marshal, not Court Martial campaign, and some of you here are also in that campaign, and we hope you'll come up and speak. Joey, who proposed to the San Francisco Pride that Joey be Grand Marshal, and we had a whole big battle about that, and it was amazing. The gay movement came out and supported, and Lori was one of the key leaders in that movement, really. It was a fantastic initiative. It was also, it was also a fight around the military crusaders, recruiters, who wanted to have a booth there, and we said no and prevented them from having a booth. And Lori was instrumental in that too. She's done continuous support for Haiti Action Committee, and there's many people here from the Haiti Action Committee. We hope you'll come up and speak. Thanks for coming. In support of the Haitian grassroots movement in the Bay Area. She also, yeah, we've said about the Omni Collective. You know, she's put a lot of time with a lot of the people here in, you know, establishing it, and was really keen on it, and, you know, loved being part of this. Global Women's Strike is one of the collectives that's part of the Omni Collective, and we're really thrilled to be part of it. We think it's a great movement center, and there's so few left in this day and age in Oakland and in the Bay Area. Lori was part of the Wages for Housework delegation to the 1977 National Women's Conference, way back in Houston, the UN Decade for Women in Nairobi, and in 1985, and the follow-up conference in Beijing in 1995 that a lot of us went to. She also went to the World Social Forum in Caracas, Venezuela, in 2006, and international conferences in the UK. Lori also helped raise a number of children and kept relationships with them until, you know, while they're grown up. And she used to, you know, her dad lived in Oregon, lives in Oregon, and actually I talked to him today just to find out, you know, if he had anything to say. We've been talking with him. He's really pleased that we're doing this. And she used to go up there and visit him and have Skype chats with him. And he got hooked on homeopathy too and started using it himself. So she is survived by her father and her brother Kenneth. Lori's reach was national and international. She will be sorely missed by her many friends, and we really, you know, are deeply sorrowful that she has passed. But, you know, we have to go on. Thanks. Okay, so I was just going to call up some people, and then we can have an open mic. Xian is an ex-partner of Lori, and also in the Women of Color in the Global Women's Strike.
Hi there. Hello. It's so great to see everybody here. It's just amazing, all the people that I remember. And they're here. Everybody's here. Thank you. Yeah, I first met Lori in 1995. I actually answered her ad in the Personals. And in those days, it wasn't on the internet or anything. It wasn't even the phone thing where you can hear the voice. It was just in a lesbian paper. And of course, our first date was where just about every lesbian in San Francisco has their first date, at Cafe Flore. And I remember her being very animated and chatty and talking about the nurses that she helped at Kaiser, the black nurses that were LVNs, and she was helping them, you know, to be able to become nurses, and how, you know, racist it all was. You know, first date, she was talking about politics, as I remember. But that was okay, because my mother was very political and raised me that way, and I was attracted to that. And, you know, being Lori's partner and then, you know, doing things with the campaign, very enriched my life very much. In fact, the year I met her, she's like, "You want to go to Beijing?" You know, I only knew her for a few months. I kind of did want to go to Beijing. There was the women's conference, but, you know, it was so sudden and everything. And then Lori, you know, through Rachel, I met Rachel through Lori, and Rachel hired me at Rainbow Grocery 21 years ago. I've been there almost that long. And, you know, I owe so much to Lori. Like everyone knows, you know, I'm learning new things. I didn't even realize she'd worked with the Harvey Milk thing. She was so humble. She probably mentioned to me she was at the White Knight thing, but she's so humble. I don't even remember that. And everyone knows she's very kind and selfless and thoughtful. She used to love to watch these mysteries on TV. I wound up watching a lot of mysteries with her. I hadn't been into that before. She really liked Perry Mason a lot. And then, of course, we all found out he was gay, and we didn't know it then. I watched a lot of episodes of that with her. And she got me into these murder mystery things. We watched Poirot. We loved, you know, Alfred Hitchcock. We watched a lot of that. And Miss Marples and so many of those other shows I never would have watched without her. So one thing I do remember, a memory that I'll never forget. Again, I met her in 1995. And we were partners for about 10 years, and we lived together for, gosh, 8 or most of that 10 years. I remember in 1998, we went to London. I've been to London 3 times, of course, with Lori, and that was wonderful. But one year we went to Crete. They call it Creta. We went with Sylvia and Nikki, and Lori and I, we were in Creta for 2 weeks. Actually, Lori and I also went to Santorini for a couple of days. And I do have this memory where we were swimming in the ocean in Crete, Lori and I, and we were just swimming, and we kind of swam around this rock-like structure, and there was this cave, where the water was going in, but I swam around the other side of it. But then she was behind me, and she didn't know. She thought I had gone in the cave. And so when I swam back around, she was just crying, like grieving over me. She thought I had gone in the cave, and she was too afraid to go in this underwater cave, to get me. And now, I'm the one that's grieving over her. So I did see her grieving when she thought that I was past. It's really hard. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Xian. Next, I'd like to invite up Betty Traynor. Betty, we've known, I don't know how long, decades and decades. We've worked together in many different capacities. Betty's a long-time supporter of the Wages for Housework campaign.
Thank you very much. Wow, there's so much, unfortunately, at memorials like this that we find out about people that we didn't know, and so many things that Rachel talked about. As Rachel said, I have been involved, I'm not too sure how many years either, probably 25 or so, on and off, with the Wages for Housework and the U.S. Prostitutes Collective. And I remember us, so many different activities, walking the hallways at City Hall when we were trying to get some legislation passed regarding prostitute women. It was on the ballot, and we were trying to get endorsements. And Rachel and Lori and I and maybe 1 or 2 other people were going from door to door to the supervisors. Rallies at the Hall of Justice against that horrible Jack. And again, things that Lori and Rachel coordinated, the International Women's Day, so many marches that we were involved in, and other groups that joined in collaboration. There's just so many things and many more that I wasn't even aware of. But just a few words that some have already said. Lori's kindness, generosity, her dedication. I mean, I'm an on and off person involved with these, but Lori was an every day, every hour involvement in all of these activities. And it's just such a remarkable person, an activist par excellence, and as people have said, a wonderful healer too. She just so heartfelt. And I wanted to just say that I was asked by 2 people that couldn't be here. One was here just a little while ago. She had to leave early, Sue Englander, but she asked if one of us could say that she was very involved with Lori's work with Chelsea Manning campaign. And then Deecha Bowler was going to be here today, but she just found out her sister passed away. And Deecha was one of the people that Lori helped in the healing, and Lori worked with her, and she's a senior in her 80s and really remembers all of the work that Lori did with her. So I just want to say that I'm just overwhelmed by what happened, and I just express my sincere condolences to her Global Women's Strike and other family, and particularly to Rachel, who, as she said, will be going on, but she lost her activist partner, I know, and it's just so hard. So, thank you.
Thanks, Betty. That's so true. She was my other half. And the 2 of us did it every day. As I said earlier, we talked on the phone, I don't know how many times, trying to figure out. 6 times a day. Lori. What do you think about this? What should we do about that? You know how it is when you're organizing. We consulted each other every day. Next, I'd like to invite up Pierre Leboisier. Pierre's a good friend of Haiti Action Network, a fighter himself, working with grassroots people in Haiti.
Thank you, Rachel, for this opportunity to say a few words about our dear sister, Lori. And I met her in, I believe, 2004. But Lori is one of those people, when you meet her, you feel like you've always known them all your life. And she was and we met as a result of the coup d'etat in Haiti that had taken place when many people were being killed. It was a coup d'etat sponsored by the Bush administration, France and Canada. And people were being killed. And I was so disappointed that there was not a major outcry as this was occurring, and it was Bush who did it. And so a number of leftist friends of mine were all of a sudden confused and not raising their voices in opposition. But thank God for the global women's strike, because they stepped forward. They were among the few who stepped forward and say, no, we won't accept this. And that's when I met Lori. She was there on the picket line with us every day. Whenever we were picketing, she was there. And she was genuine about it too. And so we bonded, we connected. And it was through Margaret Prescott in Los Angeles. And then I met Rachel, Rachel and Lori and the whole group here from the Global Women's Strike. They were always there with us. Lori was the kind of person, she is, I'll use the present tense because I believe she's here with us, Lori Nairne presente. And she is the kind of person who's, when she's got your back, you know she's got your back. If she's not there, she's not there. But if she is there with you, it's because what you stand for is what she stands for. And since then, we've been great friends. When I found out what had happened, I was in denial. I was shocked, couldn't believe it. And when I saw her laying there, that's when part of it hit me. But then I walked away. I said, nah, this is not for real. This is not what's happening. And that's why I still talk to her in the present tense. She's got this love for humanity, and that's the kind of love that Che Guevara talked about. A revolutionary is motivated by great feelings of love. And this is that love of humanity for those who are Christians that Jesus Christ also talked about, and others, other religious leaders and other philosophers talked about. That's what makes the world go round, that love we have for each other, that makes us walk with each other in times of danger, in times of needs. Lori has never been to Haiti, yet she has cared so much for the people of Haiti. And I knew that whenever something happened, we would automatically call Lori to let her know what was going on. We talked to the Global Women's Strike, Margaret Prescott, and then we'd talk to the local group here to Lori and Rachel and everybody, and all you had to say, they say, well, Pierre, what time? What's happening? What time? And we'll be there. It would have to be some major for them not to be there. So I can go on and on. I could go on and on about Lori, and I know all of you have something very positive to say about her. My only regret is that I hadn't known her before this awful coup d'etat against President Aristide and the people of Haiti had taken place. I wish I'd known her way before that time, but for the time I've known her, from 2004 to the present, I consider her my sister. And I don't say brother and sister to anybody. When I call you a brother or I call you a sister, I mean it. It's because that those bonds of love are very strong. So thank you all so much for this opportunity to say thank you to Lori, to say thank you to each and every one of you who is part of Lori's life and made Lori the person that she is. As much as she made us who we are, we made her who she is as well. The love that she reflected is the love that we gave her, and she in turn gave us that love. So I want to say my sincere condolences to Lori's family, to the Global Women's Strike, to all of Lori's friends, and I'll say her family, because Lori is the kind of person, once you knew her, and she liked you, and she loved you, you were a family. So thank you all so much, and in the spirit of Lori, we'll keep her light shining in our hearts. She will be with us on every picket line, every day in the cause for justice. Lori will stand with us and will continue on in her name. Thank you, Lori, for all that you have done. Lori Nairne, presente.
Thanks, Pierre. Next, I'd like to invite up Nedra Reese, who's we've known since 1984, criminal attorney.
Thanks so much, Rachel. It's such an honor to be here before you, people who've been brought to this room by the spirit of a great woman, a great force for justice, a great recognizer of the truth, a great challenger of injustice. Lori Nairne, I had the pleasure, the great good fortune to be asked by Lori and Rachel to go with them while they drove around, parked at various places in San Francisco Mission District to help people. They just threw open the doors of the bus, and anybody who walked by and entered, they wanted to help. They wanted to know the story, the problem, and they were both such an incredible resource for the various communities of San Francisco. It was from Lori and Rachel that it dawned on me that sex work laws were a hotbed of injustice, that laws that criminalized women, disenfranchised women, bad laws, that was the first time I read that sign, that there were no bad women, only bad laws. And Lori and Rachel carried the torch of justice and equal protection before the law to so many struggles in San Francisco and the world. They connected with so many other people around the idea of individual respect. They were a well of truth and strength. They made struggle the right thing to do. They spoke truth to power, and they demanded accountability from those in power. And I never, in the 30-odd years that I stood with Lori in meetings, on picket lines, I never heard her voice raised in rancor. Consider that. Especially in this time when our politics are nothing if not rancorous and personal and insulting. Lori never spoke but from the heart. And she never spoke to wound or hurt. She was a leader because she spoke the truth. And if people followed her, it's because they hearkened to the truth. It was a blessing to know her, and I thank you so much.
Thank you, Nedra. Next, I want to invite up Phoebe Jones-Schellenberg from the Global Women's Strike in Philadelphia. She's come from Philadelphia.
Hi, before I give a message from myself and from Philadelphia, I was asked to read a message that came in from Guyana, where I think you've heard that Lori gave a homeopathy workshop back in 2011. And they were so moved when they heard about Lori's passing that they sent on a long message. We don't have time to read it all, but we wanted to give some quotes from it. We are deeply saddened at the news of the passing of our dear sister Lori. We have such fond memories of her. She left her home and came to Guyana and devoted her time to us in our center, not only to take further care of our health, but to train us to do it for ourselves and for others, including women in the community. The joy she brought to the lives of the many children at an August holiday camp. You could talk to, oh, sorry, missed something. At a holiday camp organized while she was here. These were children she had never heard of or met before, yet she related to them as though she had known them all their lives. She taught us how to find the remedies that best suit our personalities and any illness we had. We had to take turns finding the right remedy for one another. In one instance, she treated a 54-year-old woman in the workshop who was booked for surgery, and to our surprise, the woman was able to bend over and tie her shoelace just one day after surgery without feeling any pain. Lori was a caregiver who took the health of others seriously. Even when she was back in San Francisco, she followed up keenly by phone, Skype, or email with those of us she treated here. She was someone you could talk to. She had a very warm personality, and she made it very easy for anyone to freely open up to her. She was an excellent listener. We will never forget her sweet smiles and her loving and giving nature. And then, you know, we were preparing for this event, and we actually came across something that Lori had written on her way back, or after she'd gotten back from Guyana. And she said this: "As I flew away from Guyana, a reflection process began which is still underway. I realized how inspired I was by the courage of these women, children, and men, how generous they were in spite of poverty and few resources. They grasped the principles of homeopathy with much less resistance, accepting what they saw and growing with it. Those of us from the West have been indoctrinated by a vast medical and drug industry. We are separated from ourselves as a result. We are told our bodies are weak and defenseless. We need vaccinations, drugs, professionals, and invasive procedures to fend off the enemy and survive." So we're glad to have those words from Lori herself. First, I bring greetings from all of the people who are devastated in Philadelphia, many whom she'd never met, but who she treated by phone. We tried to hook up the live streaming because they're having a remembrance at the same time in Philadelphia at our Women's Center. So they send their love and for Lori and their greetings to all of you. You know, as I was saying, when we were preparing for this, we were looking through a lot of photos, and it was quite amazing to see a 22-year-old Lori looking out at you, you know, and right before, you know, she met Selma James at a park, who brought the Wages for Housework campaign to her, to which Lori devoted 44 years of her life. And the word that kept hitting me in looking at those photos of Lori was seriousness. You know, how serious she looked. Maybe some of the photos, well, you'll see there's this smiling, but there's a very serious and a concerned look on her face on so many, especially as time went on. You know, that kind of seriousness grew. And I was surprised that that was my reaction to her, because you know, the campaign, the Wages for Housework campaign brought together many strands and brings together many strands of the movement. And Lori and I came from very different strands. Lori was kind of West Coast, alternative lifestyle, you know, flower child type of approach. And I came from the East Coast, heavy politico, you know, kind of thing. And serious was not the word at that point that I would have used to describe Lori. But, you know, the thing about the campaign and bringing us together is that we all made a commitment at that time to be in it for the long haul, and you get serious very quickly when that's the case. And it really helps you to navigate through a lot of the stuff, I'm using a nice word, the stuff in the movement, you know, the separatism or the self-indulgence or the, you know, the domination that can happen in a movement. And, you know, we all really fought together to, you know, to move together and be accountable. I walked my dogs in a cemetery, and I came across, right shortly before coming here, I came across a gravestone that said, "May the work I've done speak for me." And I thought, you know, when we put together that obituary for Lori, we were looking at that work spoke for Lori, it spoke for who she was, and we were trying to bring out the impact and how many lives she changed for the work that she did over 44 years. So, you know, we think of her with her serious face, with her clipboard, with her video camera, and I find it quite funny, really, that we couldn't even get the video camera going without Lori this time. So we all need to be stepping it up. This is a call to clipboards, a call to getting ourselves together, and to try to fill the huge gap that Lori is leaving in our ranks. Thank you.
Thank you, Phoebe. Next, I'd like to invite up Terry Collins. Terry's with KPOO Radio. He has us quite regularly on his show, and he's also an ex-Black Panther.
I hope it makes sense, because it's hard to go behind people like you, like especially Pierre. He's okay. So I hope it makes sense. But Lori, I met Lori, I can't remember how long it was, but Lori was always someone who was so, I mean, it's hard to say. It's like I knew her all my life. And the last time she took me home from a demonstration, and I said, "You want to take me? I can catch the, the 31." She said, "No, I'll take you home." So with her in the car, she had another brother. So I told her, because I was like, she said, "You know, Selma James, I want to interview Selma James, but I'm shy, I'm scared, I don't want to, I don't know." Then after the brother got out, I said, "That's her son." I said, "Oh." So one of the things, it's hard for me because I'm considered old. I'm 81 years old. When somebody that young, for example, leaves us, it really burdens me. About a month ago, I had another friend, about 65, Damira Ahmad. I knew her since she was about 16. So it really bothers me. When I first heard about, I talked to Rachel, I said, "This right here, this helps me to handle." And so I hope I make sense, because we lost a giant. We lost a hell of a woman, a giant. We lost her. But the thing is she still lives, because now I think I will talk to Selma James and talk about Lori, because I've been afraid to talk to her because I'm shy. I'm shy, you know what I mean? I'm afraid to talk to her. So I mean, Lori was so inspirational. I mean, one of the things, you talk about Haiti. I know she talked about Haiti. I know she had Haiti a lot on her mind. But I'm going to say this, and hopefully, because I feel it's necessary, that a lot of us, for example, like people like Lori, needed to take a break. You know what I mean? There's a period of our time when we feel that we're doing so much work, we got to just go somewhere and just for a month and just not do nothing, but just look at the ocean and look at the mountain or something, because she dedicated her life to all of us. And she had a day job, worked in the daytime and did all this stuff at night. So it's a fantastic woman, and like I said, I hope I make sense. And but all of you that come up here made, spoke so well of Lori.
Okay, next we're inviting up Sarah Williams, who's an ex-partner of Lori, and come all the way from Spain with the Global Women's Strike.
Thank you. Hi there. I'm wearing my Lori top today. I scrounged it off her when I was here last, almost 12 years ago in San Francisco. Had a wonderful time, the times that I spent here with Lori. Right. I'm going to start by reading a message from our sisters in Peru. Dear sisters, through you we send our deepest condolences to her family and to all of you after the death of our sister Lori. It is a moment of pain and sadness. She gave her best to the struggle and also to us. It's difficult to accept her passing. I put myself in your situation and I feel very fragile. I begin to cry. Lori helped me a lot with my health. We must have courage and strength. I had the opportunity to know her and I will always remember her with much love. A big hug for everyone. This is from Le de Mozambique in Peru. An indigenous woman in Peru, from the Federación Sindical de Trabajadoras y Trabajadores del Hogar de Perú, from the trade union of domestic workers in Peru. As I said earlier, I came here today. I came here because I needed to be with the people who loved Lori and the people Lori loved. We met in the 80s at a Wages for Housework conference in London, and I was struck by how much I enjoyed her company, her warmth, her fun, her political passion, and her infectious giggle. One of our biggest connections was our endless conversations about what was going on in the movement. In spite of the fact that we lived in different continents, a couple of decades after first meeting, we did finally get together and begin to have a relationship. Now, those conversations were really, I think, the fire in the belly of the relationship. Because, as you guys know, Lori just loved to talk about movement stuff. And so she was endlessly curious and interested about what was going on in Spain, what was going on in Barcelona, the work we were doing in Venezuela, the work we were doing internationally with Peru and with many places. She was a very international person. In spite of living in a country where there is massive censorship about what's going on in the rest of the world, Lori was wanted to be very, very connected to the international and worked hard to be. We used to have these really long conversations on the phone, and they would last 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours. I think our record was one that lasted 9 hours, which I can't imagine how we afforded it, but I knew we should run down and buy these little cards which would give us a cheaper rate on the phone. But for 9 hours, we just chatted, just talked about what she was doing, what I was doing, what was happening, what we felt about it, strategies, what might work, what wouldn't work, experiences, exchanging ideas. And that time was really precious because it's really enriching to a relationship to have that kind of input and to be able to share that. She was someone who would just grab a banner and make a placard one moment to the next and be out there on the streets if that was what was needed. And I was always really impressed by that. She was just up for it, always. She was so clear, you know, the fact that she had been in the 60s movements, and just from the moment, you know, she was an autonomous person to her dying day, that was her passion, was to be resisting the brutality in this world. And it really is quite incredible when you think about how caring and sensitive and compassionate she was, when you see how brutal the world can be. You know, her standards were really quite striking. I remember, you know, when you talk to Lori, this is such a great photo, because when you talk to Lori, that's how she would look at you. And she would look at you because she was learning from you, and she also had a homeopathic view of you. So when you'd be talking, she was listening to you. She was extremely sympathetic, which helped you to open up about all sorts of crap, which is better to get out there so you can deal with it than to try and hide it, after all. But she would be working out whilst she was listening to you as to what was needed, where to take the thing on, you know, whether it was with homeopathy or whether it was with movement stuff. She was courageous and determined and hardworking. And she channeled her compassion into the struggle, into her organizing. She made a great contribution to the world and to making the world a better place. And she can be proud of the work that she did, because she really made a difference. Now, I'd like to briefly mention someone who was very important to her, which was her boy, the boy in her life. 22 years she lived with Cupid, the cat. And he was a very important part of her life. When he died in 2009, she wrote, "He had a good life. He had the freedom to come and go as he chose. He chased rats. And he was in charge of me." And when I read that, I remembered that 10 to 15 years earlier than that, I'd been in London at a conference, and I'd been in a restaurant, and she was chatting to people, and I was overhearing a conversation. And she was talking about how when she had arrived in London, she'd opened her suitcase to find this disgusting smell. Because Cupid had that habit of, he didn't like her going away, so he'd get in the suitcase and pee on it. So she'd arrive, and all of her clothes. So I think, yeah, she was right. He was really trying to be in charge of her. I think that Lori, these last few weeks, has been raging, just like we have. She's been in a rage and been furious that she's left us too soon. It's a traumatic loss for her, for us, and for the movement. Personally, I've been really looking forward to introducing her to my two small children, Sammy and Isma. I haven't been able to travel for many years because of problems with their immigration and their papers and their passports and all sort of shit. And I couldn't come this year, and I was thinking of coming next year. And I was so looking forward to them meeting Lori, and Lori meeting them. And I was really looking forward to going off to the Redwoods and to walk around Stowe Lake. And I'm heartbroken for the future that I've lost. But also, I was thinking about the words of my homeopathic vet, because I've got two dogs as well. Anyway, a lovely Argentinian woman, because my mother passed away last year. And my vet wrote to me an email, and she said, "I'm so sorry to hear about your mum. I hope the pain of her absence gradually transforms into the tenderness of the memory of beautiful times shared. And I look forward to when I can think of Lori and when I can look at this photo and be filled with the warmth of her love. She really did love us, all of us. And then I'll be able to look at that photo and smile and think about all the fun we had and how lucky I was and how we all have been to have been the friend and the sister of such a beautiful person, a strikingly beautiful person. You too will also always have a special place in my heart. And thank you for letting me come here and share this with you, because it's really difficult to get through this loss, but being here with you guys just really is helping. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Next, I want to invite up Nikki and her beautiful daughter, who helped us, when we first got involved in Omni. It's quite a process you have to go through. And Nikki really helped us get through that process. So thanks, Nikki.
Hello. My name is Nikki, and I used to organize here at Omni. I've been away for about a year. I had a baby who's here. You probably have heard her. So I first met Lori several years ago, actually in a space that I organized with in downtown Oakland, called the Bay Area Public School. It's a free school, and we shared a space with Pseudo Room, which is another collective here at the Omni. And we had an event at the public school. Selma James came and spoke, and that was the first place where I met Lori, and we kept in touch over the next few years. And then about 2 years ago, Lori contacted me mentioning that Global Women's Strike might be interested in becoming a member collective here at the Omni. And really, this was the moment for me when I felt like Omni would be okay. Because here was a woman who had truly committed herself to living her values, who understood the challenges of collectivity, which was something that the Omni still struggles with, and she never batted an eyelash at those challenges, and who brought with her a really liberatory, inclusive, anti-racist, radically feminist vision and daily practice. Lori modeled for me the kind of radical spirit I wanted to believe was possible, filled with love, wisdom, and compassion. When I had my daughter about a year ago, I found myself really struggling with what I like to jokingly refer to as my new domestic practice. So suddenly I was doing all of these things that felt very unfeminist to me, and I felt a lot of shame and anger, and it was very curious to me that this was all coming up, despite the fact that intellectually I understood that domestic and affective labor is work. And it was really Lori and Rachel and the Global Women's Strike that helped to kind of keep me from going too far into that place. I remember really vividly when this was a bookstore, them hanging a banner in here for an event that said, "Every mother is a working mother." And I thought of that often. It was very helpful to me. And it was Lori and Rachel's presence in my life that really helped me to confront the patriarchal devaluation of affective and domestic labor that was so deeply internalized within me. And who showed me that radical feminism is not a rejection of love or of care work, of all the things that are associated with women and stripped of their value within this racist, heteronormative, sexist, ageist, patriarchal culture. But rather that radical feminism points towards a different form of life in which care and love and community are understood to be the most valuable, the most powerful, and most abundant gifts we have. So thank you, Lori, for your commitment to love and for your incredible generosity of spirit. And I'm really grateful to have had the opportunity to know her and to love her as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Nikki, and we want wages for all that hard work. Next is Sydney Ross Risdon, who's with the Global Women's Strike in Los Angeles.
Thanks, Rachel, and thank you everybody who's here today, because it's so comforting to be able to be together with you all. Everybody here shares a connection with Lori, and she and I used to laugh at connections that we shared. We share the same birthday. We both worked as nurses. We both were sisters in the Global Women's Strike for over 40 years. And we were friends. Lori was not only a warm and loving friend, but she was a fierce fighter for what she thought was right, for a more caring and a just world. She was a moving speaker. She was an organizer. And she was also one of those people, along with Rachel, who do the not so often visible infrastructure work that makes it possible for political work to continue. And she was very helpful to me because she wasn't afraid of equipment. She wasn't afraid of computers. Sam Weinstein from Payday Men's Network wrote about Lori that she had an abiding interest in computers and technology and in using it for the movement. And that meant in May, when we were having an open house in solidarity with mothers and children in prison and detention, and all of a sudden I had to use the projector and it wouldn't work, I could call Lori and I could say, "Lori, it's not working." And Lori was calm, Lori would laugh, Lori helped me get all the pieces together and the adapter and blah, blah, you know, all of that stuff, and get it to work so that I was able to take it. And so I just wanted to mention, you know, not only was she a great street fighter, but she was a great movement builder on a lot of different levels. I have a lot of memories of Lori. One of them has to do with when the Global Women's Strike sent a delegation to the World Social Forum in Caracas in 2006. And we went to visit a clinic in a barrio on a hillside and met with one of the staff of one of these clinics that was set up by the Bolivarian Revolution. And the doctor and the nurse there showed us how to make a piece of equipment that little children with asthma need. And they made it out of empty, clear water bottles, plastic water bottles. And Lori was just thrilled, you know, to see what kind of things were possible like that. And many people have spoken about Lori's skills and compassion as a healer. And I just wanted to share with you that the nurses from her work today, before she retired from Kaiser, 7 of them came in their scrubs in their lunch hour. They couldn't come here because they had to go back to work, but to say goodbye to Lori. And they came in their scrubs because one of them hadn't known and hadn't brought clothes. So they all decided to come in scrubs so that the one person wouldn't feel left out. And one of them said to me, but that's what Lori would have wanted, you know? And it was great that they were there. Linda Brewer, who's a black grandmother in Los Angeles, wrote to us about how Lori used to call her at midnight when she was struggling with pneumonia and Lori was treating her, to make sure in the middle of the night that she was all right, and how much that meant to her. And I think a lot of people think of like movement work over here and healing work over here. and like they don't go together. But for Lori, being a strong and skilled and compassionate nurse and homeopath, and being a strong and fierce and compassionate fighter for a world that doesn't want to kill people with smog and make people sick, was one struggle, and she was very integrated. And I think that integration made her stronger in both parts of her life. I'm very glad about a year ago I was able to come up to San Francisco to help with some Us Pros work, and I stayed with Lori. And we talked politics, and we watched the news, and we read mystery stories, and we did a lot of political work. And we also sat out in her backyard and watched the sunset and listened to the birds. And I'm very grateful to have had that time. And I know that everybody here is grieving and missing Lori, but I also have a very strong sense that she is going to stay with us and help push the movement forward.
Next, I'd like to bring up Anne Blumenthal. Anne is an alternative practitioner and has been, does Alexander work, and she was Lori's Alexander teacher, and she's mine. And thank you, Anne, for all the work you do on our bodies. So, come up. I know you have to leave.
Thanks. Thank you, Rachel. I think it's late 80s when Rachel, you and Lori started having lessons. So I feel like we've grown up together. After Rachel called me with this very shocking news, you know how in your grief you just kind of reach out into the dark, you know, like who can I reach to? And I was thinking of all the people that Lori would ask me every week about, you know, like, well, how's Adele doing, and how's your daughter doing, and how's your mom doing, and did you remember to give him this and that, you know, and she was checking in on all the people in my life, not to mention all the emotional states of my life, but and I called a couple of friends and I said, you know, I have this terrible news to tell you, and they didn't know her. In other words, she knew them. She was healing people not only who she knew intimately, but people who didn't know her. And I just needed to share that, like, you know, how broad the sphere was for her. You know, when Rachel and Lori came to see me as an Alexander teacher, I was really struck because they didn't come just, you know, like most students, you know, I've got this problem and I don't really understand what this thing is. It's very esoteric, you know, tell me about it. Maybe it'll be interesting, maybe it won't. They came saying, this is part of our politic. This is part of the movement for us. And I was like, okay, you're in it for life now. I mean, like, you're going to be friends of mine for life, right? Because who says that to me? Nobody says that to me. And you know, for me, it's like none of the work is because of what it looks like it's about. We're all about freeing the neck. Well, it's like really not that interesting to free the neck, but it's really interesting that we don't know how to do that. And what does that say about the way we are in the world and the unconsciousness with which we guide ourselves in the world, and their desire to study the work was about that commitment to consciousness and the understanding that politics are not something that you do, it's something that you be. And if it's not happening within you, it can't really reliably happen outside of you. So, you know, I'm so grateful for that. Really once in a lifetime kind of entry. And I also am a choreographer. That's actually what most people know me as. And my artwork has been also really influenced. I feel like I studied homeopathy with Laura, and we're really interested in the parallels between that work and the Alexander work, and also in the choreography. When I became a mother, I had to make a dance about the breast, because my life was all about the breast, right? Who is the mommy who's here just spoke, yeah. And so, you know, she was really part of that piece because it was all about women's labor and about milk and what does it mean and what is the meaning of breast in life. And so I feel like she's, you know, immortalized in my choreography as well as in my art. But really what I have written on this paper isn't any of that, but something special happened to me last night. Lori visited me, for real. Lori visited me. You know, for anybody who knows me, I'm not the kind of person that gets visitations. I'm like not that fortunate a kind of person, although I have begged for them, I've wanted them, I've urgently pleaded for them, but this came totally by surprise. It wasn't a dream, it was that she was there, and it took my breath away. It stopped me in my tracks to realize it was her actual presence, and I understood. And she was just standing there matter-of-factly with a little half smile, and I stumbled around for sure for a minute, not saying anything coherent. And then I just looked at her and I said, "Well, can I hug you?" And she said, "Of course," and because I didn't know if it was okay to hug someone from the other side, you know, and I did, and that's all I remember about this visit. And I didn't remember it immediately on waking up, but I remembered it as I was going through my morning, and I just had this like, oh my God, thank you so much for coming to me. And I was trying to figure out, well, why? Was it because of today that she was just on my mind so strongly that she came, or what was it? And then what I pondered about the blessing, of course I first thought it was just her reassuring presence, that her appearance sort of softened the shock of her sudden and abrupt absence, and this like huge mystery and bewilderment of such an utter severing of connection to her earthly being. Thank you for that, Lori. But as I sat with it more, it was another layer, and I like to think that she was showing up as she always did whenever there was a trauma or an illness or a problem to combat or to help figure it out, because she was always figuring it out, as was I, and I loved that. We loved that about each other. But I had just returned that night from a week of sitting by my mother's bedside, and I'm sure that she was partly there for that reason also, like some kind of divine reassurance that nothing is ever really severed, and that what we felt between us in earthly form was real and eternal and can't be severed and can't vanish, not really, and not in the ways that really count. Lori was an extremely devoted Alexander student. She was hungry and learning all the time, and was, although it didn't save her life, she was able to use it in remarkably to control and work with breathing in a way that I've never seen. And I've no doubt that, though I have no idea what she knew and didn't know in those moments, that she was figuring it out all the way, and is still figuring it out, and is keenly interested in what happened. All the way to the other side. I'm certain of it. You know, this sort of student-teacher bond is a really private one, and although we participated in each other's work in a very intimate way, it was not a public participation, and so the loss has been a very private one. And I'm grateful to be able to join with you all to bring that private intimacy a little bit into community that I've mostly known through her. So I'm happy to be seeing you. I know her devotion to the campaign was both all-consuming and cellular. I mean, it was intrinsic to her DNA, and her heart was so open and so huge. Her healing self, her political self, like everyone is saying, were intricately tied. They came from and were nourished by the same fountain of love and passion, and that love and passion emanated from her every move. We are all the humble and blessed recipients and beneficiaries of that. I know I was, and I will be forever grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Charlie. Are you able to come up here? Yeah. Charlie Hinton, who developed a friendship with Lori in the movement and is from Haiti Action Committee. You want to get up or stay down there?
Let's see, I got to use the left foot to get up. Hi, everybody. Well, first, my solidarity with Global Women's Strike. I know what a shock it was for me, and I'm sure it's just devastating for you all, so hang in there. Well, I found out today that Lori and I were both at White Night Riot in 1978. It's when I decided to learn how to see without glasses. I worked mainly with Lori. We were neighbors, we were friends. She loaned me her car. But around the Chelsea Manning campaign, it was a wonderful campaign that when the Pride, San Francisco LGBT Pride Board refused to accept Bradley, at that time now Chelsea Manning, as a Grand Marshal, many of us rose up, and it really reunited many aspects of the gay and lesbian LGBT left in San Francisco. And we had a wonderful campaign. We organized 1,000 people to participate in our contingent, and then we were named best contingent in the parade. So it was really sweet revenge. And one thing I really remember about Lori was just her common sense and her down-to-earth quality and her pragmatism of just really focusing on getting things done. And the other aspect we worked together around was the prison movement. That twice we drove to Sacramento together for the hearings on solitary confinement that the Joint Legislative Committee had. And she was very, always interested in the work with prisoners also. So I won't go on, but I thank you for inviting me, and thank everybody for coming, and long live Lori. I just will miss her very much.
Next, I'd like to invite up Sylvia Sally. Sylvia was in the Wages for Housework campaign here in San Francisco for years, since its inception, and then moved to London, England, and is with women of color in the Global Women's Strike.
Okay. Yeah. Nina asked me if I could read the statements from women of color in our network. And I said I didn't think I could, because I'm quite upset. But I'm in the back of the room, and I took a walk outside. All I can hear is Lori saying, "Woman, if it isn't you, who is it?" Pull yourself together, you wuss. So I'm going to give it a go. This is from Margaret, who is the coordinator of Women of Color in the Global Women's Strike. She lives in Los Angeles and couldn't be with us today. I associate first the Wages for Housework campaign and later the Global Women's Strike with Lori, because she was part of Wages for Housework campaign before I was, and what I knew about the campaign on the West Coast always included Lori. Lori was there at practically all major occasions for our corner of the movement. She was there quietly working, doing what needed to be done. When Lori spoke publicly, all took notice. She had a quiet empathy and brilliance that drew others to her message. She was reliable and principled. Lori knew her place was in the movement and organized her life to ensure that she would always have a political life. Just doing excerpts, because it's quite long. Lori was deeply anti-racist. One only needed to be around Lori, work with Lori, to know her anti-racism as something deeply connected to her own sense of justice and freedom. From support she offered to the Black Coalition fighting back serial murders, as we campaigned for justice and police accountability in the serial murders of Black women in South LA, to her always being there ready to do what's needed for Haiti, to gathering much needed facts and figures on welfare and poverty in the US for the Welfare and Caregiving Working Group. Lori understood that the movement needed her just as she needed the movement. Lori always steadfast, mostly patient, always kind, always ready to be accountable to get the job done, to schlep down to LA to help us out when she could. Once she decided on a path, Lori did not sway. Thank you, Lori, for all that you've given us, all that you have taught us. Lori Nairne, presente. And this is from the women from the UK, women in color of the Global Women's Strike in UK. Lori was a precious political sister, personifying the best of the 1960s movement, deeply anti-racist, anti-war, not conforming to the mainstream, and committed to carrying alternatives and the movement for change. With other homeopathic practitioners in the Women's Center Network, Lori helped bring together information on innovative, low-cost process for treating trauma and genocide victims with homeopathy, helping a number of refugee women in the All Africa Women's Group in London on their road to recovery. Across borders and nations, we cherish Lori and hold her close in our thoughts and hearts. And personally, I want to say something. Anne said that Lori visited her last night. I'm staying with Anne, and she visited me as well. And, you know, I was just telling Anne, she was just there, and she said, this is deep, D-E-E-P, because that's what Lori always said, things were deep. And I just looked at her, and she said, don't worry, it's going to be all right. And I've been listening to everybody speak about, you know, Lori's political organizing, and I was there. I was there. I was there too. I came to San Francisco at 21, ran away from Seattle on a holiday. And I met Lori about 3 days after I had arrived. And we became very good friends right away. And she and another woman had started the Wages for Housework campaign a few years before in San Francisco. And they're like, yeah, come along to this. I said, no, I'm not political. I don't get into that. No, don't like those groups. No, come on, come along. Okay, I'll come along. And the next thing I knew, they had me doing street theater on the steps of City Hall. And from then I was co-opted and was with the Wages for Housework campaign and the Global Women's Strike ever since. I've known Lori for 40 years. She's been such a good friend. Politically, personally, she was there when Rachel and I decided, Rachel was my partner. When we decided to have a baby, she said, come on then, over to Berkeley Sperm Bank, let's go. Then she would schlep samples back and forth in the dry ice. Come on, feet up on the wall, got to be there a half hour. When the baby was born, I was in labor, started labor, she was there. She was one of my birthing mothers, and I didn't have such a good time. And after 36 hours, I thought, I'm gonna die. This is not happening. And she said, yeah, you wish you were gonna die, but you're not. And we had a lovely little boy that she had helped raise, which was lovely. I was, as so many people have said, one thing about Lori, and she'd always say, you know, this family shit is shit. You know, you got a mom, you got a dad, you got brothers and sisters, but what? You know, and she said, your family is who you make it. And the Wages for Housework campaign, the Global Women's Strike, was Lori's family. We've been her family forever since she was 25. And same with me, since I was 21, you get out of that terrible teenage years and you're just growing and exploring. And it was wonderful to have Lori being one of my teachers.
Thanks, Sylvia. Gary Pack? No? You don't want to say anything? Okay, Gary. No, Gary's part of our alternative healing network. He was a doctor, And then he got fed up with being a doctor and feeling he couldn't do anything. And so he started studying alternative healing, and he's such a resource. He is somebody we call up every time, we need information about an herb. He's just an incredible, full of information, and he's a co-worker at Rainbow Grocery, and he's put up an incredible, all the research that he's been collecting for the last 20 years, 40, 30 years, he's put up on Rainbow's website. So, if you have some ailment and you need some alternative, herbs, or you want to find out about something, Gary developed this incredible resource on Rainbow Grocery's webpage. So, if you need to look up there, take a look. Next, Marianne. You had just a few words you said you wanted to. Marianne is with the Chiapas support group and also part of the Omni.
Thank you. I first crossed paths with Lori around the Zapatista movement, which I've been involved in ever since 1994. And I met her early on, and our paths would cross from time to time. And it was always like a real pleasure to be with her. Then our collective joined the Omni and became one of the Omni collectives. And once again, I crossed paths with Lori. And she kind of welcomed me and sort of helped me through the process of trying to figure out what was going on at the Omni. And got me through some of the meetings that, they can kind of drag on a little bit. And Lori and I would sit there and giggle and laugh and say funny things to each other. But it wasn't all fun, and life is not all fun. And I had a serious illness this summer, and the first person at my house, the minute she found out, was Lori. With her homeopathic medicine and her listening and kind words and lots of support, and talk about social justice and about women and everything. I know Lori as a social fighter, someone who cares very deeply about issues of social justice. I related to her on that level. I truly loved and respected her. And I can't really say too much more right now. It's sort of hard for me. But I'm very, very thankful that I knew her. I think I'm a better person for having known her. And I think what we all have to do is just struggle a little bit harder to make up for her not being here. Thank you.
Phoebe said that we got the obituary that you all have got printed in the Bayview. And, we've had a long relationship with Mary Radcliffe, who writes, for the Bayview and puts all the material together. And she put at the top, she leaves love in her wake. And there's a picture of the Omni Collective and a lovely picture of Lori in the Bayview. So we're thrilled about that. Next, I wanted to introduce Cindy Chang. Cindy's also part of the Alternative Healing Network that we work closely with.
Thank you.
Take a nice breath with me. It's been a lot taking in all of this today. And as I look around this room and also to see the faces that I have not seen for so long, I realize how much of an impact Lori has made on my life in terms of a healer, friend, and the person I could always go to, nurse, nurse. And so it's with a tender heart that I share with you how Lori has inspired me and my life. One of the first things that I remember from Lori, she had already passed her homeopathy and got her license already. And I was traveling to India, so of course, I talked to Lori, and she put together my own personal homeopathic kit that I took with me to take care of any problems with digestive problems or anything. So, and even to this day, I still have my homeopathy kit that I periodically have to replenish with the things that I've used up. And Lori and I shared an office, and I'm not sure what the years were, but she was always my go-to person, nurse, 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 whenever I had something going on. And another time in the early, I think probably 2000 and something, I would have very bad hives and things. So Lori would take the time to do a really in-depth, and it would take a week, and I go, why would it take you that long? But it's because she had to go home and go through all her books to figure out what was going on with me, because the layers, as Lori would say, it's deep. And, for her to figure out really what was going on, there were so many layers. And another time, I had been in the dog park with my puppy, and I had never fractured anything before. So when I fractured my wrist and broke the radius and ulna, first thing I go is, Lori was working then at Kaiser French. So I drive in there and have to ring the doorbell, and it's on a weekend. And I go, Lori, how come my wrist is like this? And then she says, I think you should go to the ER. Really? You think I should go to the ER? Okay, I guess I'll do that. And so I got back into my car and drove up to St. Mary's Hospital. I had already been, close to the area, but it didn't occur to me to go to the ER. I had to go find the nurse first. So I had to go find Lori. So now that I don't have Lori with me all the time, I guess I'm going to have to channel her somehow. So which means that I'll have to do more work myself on doing a meditative practice. And part of Lori being an activist is how I got in touch with the campaign. And as I look back, there are many memories. And then I also met Margaret separately through work in studying shamanism. So we're so deeply connected. So this tapestry here, as I look across to see all of you, is so rich and has so many different parts of my life. So I think at this point, my commitment is to stay in touch with Rachel and recommit to doing some work again with the campaign, because I've lost touch. And I think one of the things I can thank Lori for is bringing me back in touch with you and some others of you here in the campaign and some other friends that I've kind of lost touch with. And I want to thank Lori for helping my life. And part of the activism that I learned from Lori also was the cooking. And so for carbs, one of the things that Lori would do would be cauliflower. And instead of having carbs, she could use cauliflower. She would just, in her kitchen, would just cut up cauliflower. And, as I, look back on all these different things, it's such, I think, I didn't realize how much of an impact until now she's not here. So I look to the rest of you here to say, recommit yourself to whatever you're passionate about, and we'll celebrate Lori's life by carrying on. And so thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Cindy. Next, I'd like to invite Joey Kane. Joey was the instigator of the Chelsea Manning ruckus when he proposed Chelsea Manning be a Grand Marshal on the, at San Francisco Pride, and the whole thing exploded. And the movement really came up in a way that the LGBT movement hadn't been up since Stonewall, and it was like a reoccurrence of Stonewall. It was really exciting times, not quite. But, you know, to see 200 or 300, 400 people at protests was fantastic. Joey?
Thank you. Yeah, actually, it was at a meeting in my living room that I think I met you, and I met Lori and a bunch of people. It was really a case of people from a lot of different political worlds coming together suddenly in a living room. And Lori was her usual kind of grounded, you know, just grounded. She made sense. We obviously had a room full of people, many of whom had a lot of different agendas. And again, Lori helped it stay focused. And we actually had 3,000 people marching in the parade that year. Charlie had said 1,000, but it was 3,000. And we did honor Chelsea Manning, and we did. I've been told by the people who were really working, I can't remember the name of the organization that was really working for Chelsea Manning. Who was it? Does anyone remember? Well, they said that it was the actions of what we did in San Francisco that caused the Chelsea's case to be remembered and to go even farther than what it had done. So, you know, Lori was an integral part of that. She also, turns out, was a neighbor of mine. And I would ride my bike home from Rainbow. I too work at Rainbow. It's where old leftists go to get a job to make enough money to retire. And I would be riding my bike home around 10:30 at night, and I would run into Lori, who was just going to or leaving a corner store. And it was always wonderful to run into her. We always said, oh, let's get together for dinner, and let's get together for dinner. We never quite did that. But I'm really glad I had the chance to work with her. She really was, for me, a mentor or a model of how you can be involved in the left and not be crazy and be able to work with a lot of different people and not lose your mind. So that's it. And really thank you also, Rachel, and the folks who put this together in such a short notice.
Okay, we're going to have an open mic now, and I'm sure lots of you have lots to say about Lori. So, anybody who wants to come up? Nancy, we know Nancy from years ago when you were in KPFA radio show, and Nancy used to have us on her show when we were the Wages for Housework campaign.
Right, yeah. When my friend Jane told me that Lori had passed, and it just started me thinking about, oh my gosh, how long all it has been. And I had, before I was doing a radio program, I had gone to answer phones at KPFA and became a cleaner there. With another woman, we were cleaning. And that then, Nava Mizrahi, who's with Max Tarshu, she had invited me to join something called Household Workers' Rights. And Household Workers' Rights then got me to an event, I think that Rachel and Lori and I think Margaret was involved in, and where you had come from England, and we're talking about the nurses' strike in England in a hospital, and it was connected with prostitutes, also supporting prostitutes, way back then in the early 80s. And I was going, wow. And it was at a time where there was still some separation on both sides of the bay, and also both with lesbians and gays, that was starting to come together, but this was part of that, I think. And what happened then is, as time evolved, the wages for housework, oh, that was the other thing, is that this idea of women taking time out from their lives, whether it was at a paid job or it was an unpaid job at home, that there'd be a day off, and that women you know, it was being suggested, first of all, here, but that was really suggested for the whole world, to take the time off for us to brainstorm, for us to relax, for us not to always be on call with the next thing and the next thing. And it was such a revolutionary idea, even at that time. And it has continued. And then I heard from either Rachel or Lori that they were going to be involved with the International Year of the Woman. And I think the one already in the Scandinavian country had happened. I can't remember if Mexico had happened, but you were preparing. I do remember that you came on and talked about preparing to go to Nairobi. And at that time, the women's movement was so white. And so Rachel and Lori were talking about, they were going to Nairobi, where there would be a lot of women who couldn't come to these other gatherings across the world, but could get to Nairobi, and that where it could be talked about all the work that women do for nothing, like women carrying water, you know, for hours, and never recognized. And then they were preparing to go to the UN to the gathering of women in Beijing. And again, they came on the air. And then meanwhile, there'd be other organizing that they were doing. But what moved me was that they were they were working with the prostitutes in San Francisco, and they were talking about the fact that their lives deserve to be respected, and they deserve to be safe, and that they deserve to know they have other opportunities if they want them, but to not be shamed. And all of this was very revolutionary as far as I was concerned. And I was really grateful that it could be something that could be on KPFA's air. And I guess for me, it just seemed like they were just going to be going on forever. And I think that they are. And I think that as I'm hearing, as I'm seeing, I'm just realizing how much Lori was already in tune with a wavelength that is what we're working toward, what our highest aspirations are. But she was living it all the time, and the incredible relationship that she had with Rachel, and the way that they were able to do their work that was so modest and so powerful at the same time, and so capable, and like without a lot of ego that one can see in a lot of other places. That's not what was happening there. It was just real, and it just went on, and I'm appreciating the fact that I know it's going to keep going on. Thanks.
I'd like to give special thanks to Rob, who Lori loves. Lori loves you, Rob. She would always talk about you, and he's been doing all the technology. It's great. He figured out how to put the slides on, all that technology. Are we live streaming? Yeah, we're live streaming. So yeah, we really thank you for all your work. It's wonderful what you've contributed to this event. What? Oh, do you want to say anything, Rob? No? Yeah, I was just going to say one more thing. We're going to be doing another memorial event for Lori, but it's going to be to benefit the Haiti the Haiti Emergency Relief Fund. And we think that is really right, because Lori's, heart was with Haiti, and she did a lot of work with Haiti and the Haiti Action Network. So we'll let you all know. And please sign the book at the back so that we have all your contact info, and we can let you know when the next piece is for Lori. Thanks. Oh, this is Sarah Calloway's. This is...
I have to add Sarah Calloway's. Oh, if you don't mind, I have to. My sister Sarah Calloway. I've been hearing about. Huh? Oh, I'm sorry. I've been hearing about Lori the last 20, 30 years, it seems like, through my sister. I never met her, never met Lori, and all I've been hearing about is this great person, and now I see why. Sarah's been in London working with Global Women's Strike. Oh yeah, I saw her sister there. Where I don't see her yet. She's in one of those pictures. But anyway, I just have to add Sarah Calloway's name to the great to this great meeting of everyone. Sarah she'd never let me live it down if I didn't mention her here. Right? She's been bugging me about it. So Okay, thank you all very much. I'm 40-year retired registered nurse, by the way. I've been around the world twice, so all healthcare. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Laura Chandler, and Lori had many tribes, and it's really, really comforting to be here with everyone, sharing, kind of helping each other through our grief at the loss of her. And Lori was a colossal spirit and a colossal human being, and this loss is tremendous. Lori was, I met Lori 16 years ago through my partner who had known Lori for over 30 now. They had a healing collective together 30 years ago. And we remained close through that time. And I would say Lori, you know, I knew many of you through her stories and tales of her work. And I feel like Lori was my family, my friend and my family. We spent many holidays together and many birthdays together, and I liked to cook for Lori, and she liked to, we spent many dinners and had tea a lot. And so what I wanted to share with you is another part of her life. She was, my partner and I have a nonprofit organization called the Foundation of the Sacred Stream, and Lori was an important part of that. And she was on our board, and she taught there. And my partner Isa and I really encouraged her to teach. We wanted her to teach. We wanted her to share her knowledge. She was so humble, as so many people have said. And I talked to her about writing a book, because she really had so much information and so much knowledge. And just a couple of things I want to mention. And one is to Sarah's point about Cupid, her cat. I just want to add a story to that. After Cupid died, she became allergic to cats. And she said that it was Cupid making sure she never had another cat. Lori, we were teaching in Hawaii when Lori passed, and she had been intending to come with us to that, on that trip, and she canceled with us a few months ago. And, well, you know, I think she knew. He is checking in. And we have, and hello, there's some, that's great. So many of Lori's students were on the trip with us, and so we held circles for her every night. And what we realized, I think the important thing that we realized, you know, is so much that my partner and I wanted her to share her knowledge, and we just bugged her about that. You know, write a book, you know, teach classes, and she did teach classes. But then we realized she had imparted all of this information to all of us. So we have it, whether it's activism or homeopathy, parenting, whatever it is, Lori really left us with a legacy that we can share with each other. So to that end, we are starting a homeopathy group, kind of like a book club. And Corey, who was here earlier, is going to help lead that, one of the great homeopaths here in the Bay Area. And so just in her honor and to continue sharing that information, we're going to make that happen and open to ideas. And
we're also going to hold a memorial at our foundation, which you're all welcome to come to and participate in. And that will be on November 11th at the Foundation of the Sacred Stream Center in Berkeley. So I'm going to be in touch with Rachel about that. And all of you, if you just want to get in touch with me, you can do that at sacredstream.org, info@sacredstream.org, and we'll let you know. But it will be on November 11th. Coming up, and it just gives us all some time to process this and come back together and celebrate her. And I'm really excited about that you're doing the fundraiser. It's just such an excellent way to honor her, and I just don't think we can have too many celebrations of her life because, as I said, she was so colossal. So I just want to thank Rachel and everyone who is involved in putting this together. This was not easy to do, and everyone is grieving, and I just, you know, wish you all well and, you know, holding Lori in all our hearts.
Okay. Emily? Emily can introduce herself, but Emily, we work so closely with for International Women's Strike and then May Day.
Yeah, hello, everyone. I'm Emily. So I met Lori while we were organizing for the Oakland Women's Strike, which was just last March. And it, as did some of the people here. And we did it in a very short amount of time. And it very quickly started to seem like quite a daunting task. And I cannot tell you how relieved it made me to have Lori and Rachel at those meetings with us, with all of their knowledge and experience and representing Global Women's Strike. It was very strengthening. And in the days leading up to the event, I emailed with Lori, texted, was on the phone with her, and I, was so grateful for her mentorship. And that's one thing I think is really important to point out in my experience in the short time that I knew her. She was such a wonderful mentor because she managed to sort of lift people up and give guidance and support without kind of pushing you out of the way if you didn't maybe know what you were doing. And I think that she understood that role, right, mentoring people, helping them grow, was an important way of building the movement. And she took that role, I think, seriously, because for some of us, it's not built into our upbringing to find mentors like that, and it can be quite difficult. And I think that she knew that, and so she was willing to play that role. And I learned so much from her. So I'm very grateful. Thank you, Lori.
Yeah, all this group here, we all worked together. And it was a great march that we all organized together in, what, 2 weeks? And how many people we had? Hundreds, thousands. It was huge. Yeah, 3 to 5. Anybody else want to come up? Sharon. Sharon Lungo and her beautiful daughter.
Trying to keep it together. My name's Sharon Lungo. I'm from LA. My people are from Cuscatlán, El Salvador. Sorry, better. That's my daughter, Soraya Berta, named for Berta Cáceres. Yeah, everything that I wanted to say and was thinking, came out already in story and thought. you know, the beauty of who she was. And I was just sitting back there and basking in the beauty of parallels and the shared stories. I also met Lori as a member of the Global Women's Strike. I met the strike in 2000 when I was organizing in Los Angeles, and at that time Lori was part of the San Francisco family that would come down to Los Angeles, and then I came up here 10 years ago, and so, you know, we built a stronger relationship that way. And I too remember being in Venezuela with her. I remember being on a bus from Caracas to Los Teques and sitting down, and Lori was breaking down homeopathy to me. You know, I remember just kind of having my mind blown for a little while, you know, and how freely she shared her knowledge with me, you know, and she didn't know me that well, and but she was just really, you know, really willing to share who she was and the knowledge that she had, and to satisfy my curiosity that way. I remember having to get off that bus because there were too many of us and too much luggage, and having to trek up the mountain alongside of everybody else. Right? You know, the spirit of sisterhood that resonates so strongly in the strike. I remember when I met the strike as a unit, you know, thinking about this incredible family and network of sisterhood that existed all over the world. And the undying support that I witnessed all the sisters give each other. You know, and as kind of newer in the movement, you know, I felt like the strike really raised me. And taught me that, you know, our work was more than just about our politics. It's about taking care of each other and investing in our health and in our emotional well-being, and, you know, taking care of each other and uplifting each other's way of life, whatever that was. So yeah, I just want to echo everything that was said about Lori, you know, her unconditional love and support and willingness to share her healing ways with us. You know, I too, when I was pregnant and getting ready to have my child, remembering having a conversation actually with Lori and Sydney. You know, they were fortunately for myself in the same room, you know, and really helped me out in a situation where I was really scared, you know. And as political people, you know, we know and understand that we don't trust the system and that, you know, doctors and the system aren't always operating in our best interests, but sometimes you just need your comrades to remind you of that. You know, as grounded as we are in that knowledge and in that understanding, you know, sometimes our colleagues just reassuring us that we're doing the right thing, and, you know, that I wasn't hurting my child, that, you know, by letting her take her time and come here, that I was doing the right thing, despite what the doctors were trying to scare me and tell me otherwise. And even just a couple of weeks ago, I was crying around on Facebook because I had food poisoning, and there pops up a message from Lori saying, hey, you know, these remedies will work really good for that food poisoning. And come by because I want to see your daughter, you know. So, you know, I'm sad that I wasn't able to make that visit, you know, before she passed, but I talked to her in ceremony this weekend. I was fortunate to be in ceremony this weekend, and I said Lori's name, and this really incredible peace just came over me, and it felt like I didn't need to say much more. You know, like she was really well taken care of, and, you know, I just knew that, you know, Lori's one of our spirit helpers now, and, you know, appreciating all the spirits that helped her too, you know. That's how I see our healers, you know, they have spirit helpers that come and help them, and, you know, Lori had some powerful spirit helpers, you know, as witnessed by all the people that she helped and all the lives that she touched. So yeah, I'm really grateful for her legacy. You know, I'm really grateful for how you represented things, Sydney, as, you know, the integration of healing and politics and life, and just how all that came together in her walk of life. And the ripple effects of that, you know, all over in these generations now. You know, I think about work that my sister's involved in, the Healing Clinic Collective, you know, where they're offering healing work to people who don't have access to that. And I hear these stories about Lori, you know, and I say, well, you know, that's that legacy that's moving on, and people that laid that foundation for us that we didn't even know. Maybe, you know, a lot of people in the collective don't know about Lori, but, you know, her work is laid out ahead of all of us. So, you know, just thinking about her like that. And if it's okay, I wanted to offer a song for Lori. It's a song for Oshun, and it's it's about women, and so thinking about her connection to Haiti and Guyana and all of our relatives there, I wanted to offer this song to her. So, and hopefully my daughter will cooperate over there. ¿Vas a cantar? Okay. Mujeres de fuerza, hay mujeres de luz, mujeres de fuerza, hay mujeres de luz, son la fuerza de Oshun, son la fuerza de Oshun, son la fuerza de Oshun, la fuerza de Oshun. Esa fuerza la centra, esa fuerza le eleva, tenle fe esa fuerza. Llega la luz y se entrega la fuerza de Oshun, es la fuerza de Oshun, sos la fuerza de Oshun, la fuerza de Oshun. Ay, madre protectora, ay, Lori cuidadora, tenle siempre en la mente la dulzura presente, es la fuerza de Oshun, es la fuerza de Oshun, es la fuerza de Oshun, es la fuerza de Oshun. Hay mujeres de fuerza, hay mujeres de luz, hay Lori de fuerza, nuestra Lori de luz es la fuerza de Oshun, es la fuerza de Oshun, es la fuerza de Oshun, sos la fuerza de Oshun. Esa fuerza te eleva, esa fuerza te centra, ten la fuerza, fuerza. Llega la luz y se entrega la fuerza de Oshun, la fuerza de Oshun, sos la fuerza de Oshun, sos la fuerza de Oshun. Ay, Lori protectora, ay, Lori cuidadora, tenemos siempre en la mente la dulzura presente, es la fuerza de Oshun, es la fuerza de Oshun, sos la fuerza de Oshun, sos la fuerza de Oshun. Vamos então. Tá, graças.
Thanks, Sharon. Yeah, I also wanted to thank Eric, who's in Payday Men's Network in Philadelphia, who's part of our bigger network. And he put together the slideshow. You know, we were sending him photos for days and days. Tons of photos we kept finding, having him add them in. And he came up with a beautiful slideshow. So thanks, Eric. Anybody else? Okay, I hope everybody signed the book. So we have your info. Go ahead.
Sorry, before Rachel closes, I just want to mention a few names. The first one is Andai from Guyana, who was very shocked, who was really the point of reference for the women that then Lori went and trained in homeopathy, and we've known her for many years. And she was terribly shocked when she found out about Lori, because she and I has been very, very ill for a very long time as a result of having chemotherapy for cancer in 1982 or 4, I can't remember, in the early 80s, really a long time ago. And although she survived the cancer, she then got very badly affected by the chemo over the years, because she was given much stronger chemo than they would give now. And she, I suppose, never expected that she was going to survive Lori, who was the person whom she consulted on Skype regularly. And she was very shocked. The other one is Maggie from Ireland, who again, Lori took care of her mother for many years. And again, her mother has survived Lori, largely as a result of the work that Lori did for her. So I wanted to mention her. And then Nikki and Laura and Carrie from the English Collective of Prostitutes. who often met on Skype with Rachel and Lori about what was going on here with Us Pros and Legal Action for Women and any work that was jointly being done as the International Prostitutes Collective. And then Dee Dee and Dean, and Eric and Giorgio and Ariane and Sam, who I think all worked on the Chelsea Manning campaign. So I was very glad when you spoke about the whole Grand Marshal story. There was a whole contingent at the Women's Centre in London that was on those Skype meetings. And Lori would report exactly what had happened and who was full of shit and who was better and who you could trust and who you couldn't. You know, and it was all very detailed and very exciting when it was won. It was a great victory. I still remember when they announced, yes, he's going to be Grand Marshal, and everybody was so excited. And in fact, Giorgio from Payday, we used to kind of make jokes about it because wherever Giorgio went, and he went to many meetings of all sorts, he would always mention Chelsea Manning. Giorgio would get up and make a little speech about Chelsea Manning no matter what the hell the meeting was about. You know, it was just fantastic. And so when Chelsea Manning was finally freed, we all celebrated in London, as did people all around the world. And finally, I want to mention Anne from Wages Due Lesbians, one of the early ones who is still active in London in our campaign and who was also very shocked, and everybody really at the Women's Centre who was really shocked. And I'm really glad and thankful to have been part of this passing of Lori all together so that we can properly thank her and appreciate what she did and remember her together and resolve together that we will carry on that work and that we need to do it with even more conviction, and we need more hands, basically, because one terrible thing, and in fact the first thing that crossed my mind when I heard it after the shock was, oh my God, Rachel has lost the main person that she could count on a day-to-day basis here in San Francisco. And that is a terrible blow for the campaigning work that you have heard about today. So please, if anybody's, you know, ready to pull even more weight than you're doing already, here's Rachel, who's our point of reference on the spot. And she's going to need all the help she can get in order to keep all this together. So thank you very much.
Yeah, and thank you all for your thoughtful and lovely, caring memories of Lori. It was just wonderful. We have a videotape of it, you know, for those that weren't here and want to know what people said about Lori. And, you know, we're going to continue on. We'll never forget Lori. You know, we'll have that picture at our Women's Centre and one here at Omni. And, yeah, I hope you all sign up. There's lots of work to do. And, you know, we're going to continue on with Lori's presence with us. And Lori presente. Lori presente. Presente, presente. And there's food for people and chatting. Oh, no, yeah, a photo of everybody together would be lovely. No? Yeah? Up here? Thank you all.
¿Qué está haciendo?